All right, so we're going to do running analysis. We're going to use a couple pieces of software. So the first one is going to be the Yager app. So this was taken on an iPhone within the Yager app, and then it automatically uploads to the cloud where you can log in on a computer and be able to analyze it with the different features. I've already analyzed the video. I just use this as an example of the different features within the software. So you can select different joint angles. That being said, some of them work really well. Others of them seem to glitch at times. And so I often need a hand, depending on the angle that I'm measuring, I usually need a hand do it and draw in the angles, which I've done, and I'll show you the screenshots of that. This is also a secondary feature where you can not just do a still in a single stride, but you can get a sense of what the individual's trunk angle is. That's the example that's being shown is the lateral trunk angle. What's over the duration of the run. Anywhere in this case, it should be anywhere between 0 and 5 degrees. 5 to 10 would be acceptable, but would need to be potentially addressed or identify the underlying cause, etc. And so that is one feature. The feature that I ended up using was the markup. Where you can pause said video. We'll do it here for the knee, where you would just draw in. We've already put stickies on her to improve the accuracy of hitting the joint angle, the greater trochanter lateral femoral condyle, and the lateral medial condyle. So that is the first piece of software we will use. The second one that we will use is going to be an Excel spreadsheet. This one is of my own design, influenced by different courses that I've taken in regards to running. Let's see. So the blank tool looks like this, where you have the running profile, and then you write in your different angle values. It will give you a score, either good, mild, room for improvement, or moderate. So the different scores that we've looked at would include or the different metrics or measures that we looked at. So let's go sagittal plane first. So we look at in the sagittal plane, we look at the initial contact, we look at the knee, hip, and ankle flexion angle. We then look at the mid stance to identify the joint excursion. I'm going a little quick. So you have the initial contact, and then you would subtract, or the Excel spreadsheet would subtract once you put in the numbers, the knee, hip, and ankle flexion angles here to identify the amount of joint excursion in the sagittal plane. And then you also, in the sagittal plane at mid stance, you also take the forward trunk angle. And then from the posterior view, there's three metrics that you look at. The first is the lateral trunk angle, which we saw there being graphed by the software itself. We see the lateral trunk, hip drop, and then we also look at the rear foot inversion, eversion. Given the volatility of this, the transverse coupled motion that this rear foot has with tibial internal external rotation, this is dichotomized within the Excel spreadsheet. Just plus or over 13 degrees or less than 13 degrees is being acceptable, and that's based off the current literature. So what I've done is I've taken those values that you see in each of the different planes, and then I've put it into the running performance tool. So in this case, if we break it down, let's see if I can do this. Maybe not. There it is. Great. So we'll use this as an example. So in the posterior view, I went through and I wrote down the different angles for the posterior view during initial strike, or during mid stance, excuse me, from the front trunk angle, rear foot pronation angle, the contralateral pelvic drop, and then based off the scores relative to the cut points would give me a green, yellow, or red light. The red lights that stand out across the different planes and different measurements that we've taken has been there's a bit of stiffness on the left limb in general, and I'll show you what I mean by that in the shock absorption pie charts below. So the hip flexion angle was at 13 degrees versus 16 degrees at initial contact. What we also saw is that the overall torso and trunk angle was a little bit upright, which can be associated with less hip flexion and less hip absorption as well. From that, we can also show, and oftentimes I do see these as linked, is that there's a little bit more knee past toe during the mid stance. If I was able to pull that back up. So if we draw a plumb line right down from the center of the knee joint, is that it does fall just past the toe on both knees. Again, a little bit more of a forward trunk angle may actually help to facilitate a little less of that. And so I do see that the two red ones here are linked, and then as well, and with that of the anterior trunk lane, I see that association. So if we were trying to have more green here, it would be a subtle shift from under 10, excuse me, at 9 degrees to maybe 11 or 13, and we could kind of go through some motor retraining with that. Additionally, when we look at the shock absorption, so right leg versus left leg, what we're noticing overall is that it's on both legs, the knee is doing the majority of the shock absorption. That being said, when we look at the values, we're seeing that the right leg consistently has greater joint excursion at all three major joints in the sagittal plane, that is the hip, ankle, as well as at the knee. This would be suggestive that there is more of a stiffening strategy on the left limb. It's curious as to why that may be. My suspicion, again, it is only just that, a suspicion that would need to be tested out, would be I would be interested in looking at peak force production in the sagittal plane for each of the major joints, as well as the power production relative to body weight. In this case, I'm expecting potentially to find an asymmetry from left versus right because of the discrepancies that we see in the left versus right leg. And then though the film that we have doesn't have audio associated with it, at least I don't think it does. It was apparent when running is that there was some deviation, there was some asymmetry in the pattern at which the individual was hitting the ground with there was a firm, it seemed as though there was a little bit more firm impact on the left limb versus the right. The other way that you can grossly appreciate this in the film is looking at the amount of drop, maybe that's the incorrect word, the amount of vertical oscillation of the pelvis on the right leg versus the left, where the pelvic just doesn't drop as much and doesn't fall down. In this case, it would be maybe advantageous for that to happen because of it would suggest that there's more springiness in that right limb versus the left. And yeah, so that is the running analysis using a combination of an iPhone, could be any high-speed camera over 100 frames per second. In this case, it was 240. The Yager app, as well as Microsoft Excel.